Okay, we're adding a new source file, and we'll call this grading. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a program that's going to get a grade, calculate the grade, and display the grade. So we'll see exactly how to do it. We do it one step at a time. So we're going to do an include, too bad I can't spell, IOStream. We'll do include string, which we may or may not use. And we'll do include, let's see, in case we want it, we'll do IOmanip. Using namespace standard. So let's start in here with our main function. All right, so what we want to do is we want a function that's going to return a grade. So we'll just call it get grade. And obviously we have to set some bounds for the grade. So we're going to have an integer and an integer for the highest and the lowest. And why do I have reds? Okay, so that's good. So now what we need to do is a couple of constants. And the lowest grade could be 0. And the highest grade could be 100. All right, so we have it here. So now we need to write the function getGrade, return an integer, and this is going to be very similar to what we just did before. All right, so now again, we're going to put a prompt. And we're going to do a string. Actually, we're going to do a cout. Enter a grade between lowest space A and D and a space highest, and then all right, so now we have to decide how we're going to do this. So first thing we're going to do is create a Boolean. And we're going to decide, do we want to make it have data or need data? So let's do it with need data. Again, it's your call how you do it, as long as you're comfortable with it. So now we need to put this inside a do loop. So we're going to do while. Now, if you get an error message, just check. You have to have parentheses in there. Just like with an if statement, you must put parentheses. With a while statement, you must also put parentheses. Anytime there's a condition, you're going to need to put parentheses in here. So now we're going to do cin, and we're going to get the number. Okay, well, we don't have a number in here, so we'll just put grade for now, and then we'll create a integer variable. And we have this reversed. So once we write it this way, then we're going to change it to have data. And I'll show you the and way of doing things. So we're getting the grade. So the next thing we're going to do is need data. And what is our conditions? Well, one of two things has to happen. It has to be lower than the lowest grade, or higher than the highest grade. If you put an and, it will never happen, because it can't be both lower than the lowest and higher than the highest. So we're going to do here, grade is less than the lowest. And do we have lowest? Is it lowest here? Or, and notice I'm putting parentheses in here, grade is higher than the highest. So now we'll check and see. So if, now anytime you need a condition, you have to put it in parentheses. If need data, and we'll just put cout error, just for time's sake, please re-enter. And let's go up, and now we have to call this. So we need another integer, and we'll just call it or grade. And again, remember that this grade is totally different than any other grade in here. They're totally different than this grade. What's going to happen is this grade is going to disappear once we return the grade, which will be here. Remember, we need our return statement. It's no longer there. Need data is no longer there. So here we're going to go in and just put in grade equals get grade. And what did I spell wrong? Oh, okay. And then we are going to pass in lowest and highest. Now notice that I'm not putting any integer or anything like that in here. You put the data types in the prototype up top here. Only the data types. You can put in a variable, but you really don't need to. Just put in the data types. That makes it a lot easier. Here you put only the variables or the constants that you're passing. And in the function itself, you must put both of them. So let's run it and see what happens. And we'll put cout the grade is grade. All right, so that looks good. And we'll see how things work out. So let's just try one grade. Enter grade. So let's put 101. Smart kid. Okay, please re-enter. Error, please re-enter. So we have some cosmetic stuff to fix. So what I like to do is before I end it, I'll go in and physically fix it ahead of time. Please re-enter, and we'll just put in here. So we don't need to actually stop it and restart it. We still have it, but now it's fixed, and I don't have to remember it. So now let's put in 0. Is 0 the lowest grade? Okay, so let's put in -9, and we have the same thing. Now let's put in 99, and that works. Grade is 99. So that looks pretty good. So now what we're going to do here is we're going to print an error message. So I can show you just the purpose of having a void function. So we'll just go in here and create one. And it's void, and we'll call it display error. And we need a string. So we'll create a function down here, void, and display and we'll just call it message. So for right now, just to test it, I'm going to put cout in display message. And so in here, please, so cout here, we're going to put display message or display error. And we'll just put this here. And it's not going to display high, even though it's being passed. So that'll be our next step. You know, again, do one thing, test it, fix it. All right, so let's do 101 in there. Please enter. Okay, so it says in display message, or it should be in display error. So that works out good. So now what we need to do is put display error, and we can do a string and we'll just leave it like this for now, and then we'll put in here error message equals you must put in a number between and this between, and let's see what happens now. See, the problem is if you have an error message in here, you cannot add numbers to it. So you must put in, let's put in a valid number.
You misspelled valid, Professor.
What's your point? $5 off for you.
My point is that I forgive you again, so you have 488 now.
All right, I'll make a note of it. And we're doing it kind of one step at a time, and we're doing it a little bit so you can see how each one of these things works. So we're going to do display error. Too bad I can't spell. And then we're going to do error message. Let's try this. Let's see if I can actually spell. Then we're going to do error message equals valid All right, so let's see if we can do something because we're passing a parameter. This is still an integer, but it's not a necessarily a constant integer. So let's see what we can do here and let's see if we can convert it to a string and see if we get an error message. And let's see what happens when we put it in here. Okay, so let's see what we have in here. You must lowest. Okay, no suitable construction for converting int in there. So those are things you have to be aware of because this is a constant. So you have to be very careful of that in here. So we're going to address this at a later date. So what I always like to do is make a lot of errors so that when something doesn't work, you have an idea of how to do it. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to print valid numbers are for time's sake. And next week I'll show you an easier way how to do it. Are 1 and 100. So this defeats the purpose of it, but it gives you an idea of how to do the messages, the functions. That's the whole purpose of the functions. So over here, we're going to do error message the second time, and we're good over here. So let's see what happens now when we run this program. So let's put in 101. Okay, in display, enter a grade between 0 and here, in display message, in display message. Okay, so the answer is pretty simple. We never bothered to display the message. So let's get rid of this. Okay, notice how I'm doing one thing at a time and fixing them. Okay, so now we have some cosmetic. You must put in a valid number. Valid numbers are between 1 and 100. So here, notice because we don't have an end line, we don't have to create one. So we're going to put one in here. Or we could have done the end L. So let's try it again. Of course, I'm going to get an error since I have this open. Okay, so we do 101. So now you must put in valid numbers are 1, enter a grade. So we're missing something. I never bothered to put in the end, little n. And then we'll put in another one here. So it's start with it instead. So let me close this and we'll rerun it. So let's try this 101 again. Boom. So that looks pretty good. So now we'll enter a valid grade 99. Boom. So now let's use a for loop to get 3 grades. So the way you do that is we're going to put in, say, the number of students. So let's create a constant integer here. Num students. And we'll do 3. So now what we need to do is we need to get this grade 3 times. So we're going to do a simple for integer I equals, and we're going to start off with 1. And then I is going to be less than or equal to max students. Where is max students? Oh, num students. Okay, no wonder it's not coming up. All right, so we're missing the I plus plus. All right, so let's take a look at this. We have a total of 3 students, so we need 3 grades. So we're going to get grade number 1, grade number 2, and grade number 3. So now once I gets incremented to become 4, remember I plus plus means increment I by 1. So now we go back to the beginning of the for loop, and I is now 4, which is not less than or equal to the number of students. So for right now, let's just get 3 grades and see how we work. Okay, enter a grade. So we'll put in valid grades. 89, 92, and 100. And that's it. So that takes care of that. So what we're going to do now, we're going to create a sum and an average. And now we're going to use a float and average. So we're going to create a function that's going to calculate the average. So now each time we do this, before we do anything, even though we've initialized sum, never take anything for granted. And we're going to do sum equals 0. Yes, I know you're doing the same thing twice, but you have to make sure that you get accurate data. So the grade is here. So what we're going to do here is sum. I'm going to put sum equals sum plus grade. Okay, that's the old-fashioned way of doing it. The best way to do it, and you don't have to do it this way, plus equals grade. That's the same thing as saying add grade to sum and store the number in sum. So now we're getting the total in here. When we're done, we're going to put Cout total of grades is and sum. So let's test that out. We'll do 70, 80, and 90 just to see how things go. All right, so we'll do 70, 80, and 90. So the answer should be the sum should be 150, 240. So the total of grades is 240. So that works out good. So now we want to calculate the average in here. So we need another function. This one's going to be a float, and we'll call it calc average. And it's going to take 2 parameters. One's going to be an integer, and the other is going to be an integer. One is going to stand for the sum, and one's going to stand for the total number of students. So we'll go down here, and we're going to do calc. So it's float, calc, average. So we're going to have integer, and I'll just put total for the heck of it. I could put sum, doesn't really matter. Integer max. All right, so what we need to do now here is we need to create a variable called average. Again, average here equals 0. Then we're going to calculate it by saying average equals the sum divided by max. And actually, this should be total. Now, this is going to give us, in all probability, the wrong answer. That's okay. We're going to fix it. So we want to return average. This is a very common mistake. It's called integer division. Very common. Because total is an integer and max is an integer. And when you divide an integer by an integer, you get an integer. So if the answer happens to be 95.5, the answer is going to turn into 95. But let's check and see how things go. So we're total grades is in here. And then we want to do average equals calc average. And we need to pass the sum. And we need to pass the max students. Okay, it's not showing. That's because it's number of students. How many times can I do the same thing over? And then we'll see out. Now, one thing I want to make a note of is I normally write code in main, a little short stuff, and then I put it in a function. So this, I can put this in a function called the display average or display results or whatever we want. And that way we can pass different things to it. We only have to write the function one time, and then we can display different things to it. So let's run this and see what happens. See if we made any mistakes. We are going to get a mistake because we're going to be doing integer division. So let's do 89, 92, and 95. And let's see what we get. So that should end in a, I'm not really sure, somebody with a calculator divide that in here. So the grades is in there. So 276 divided by 3, I guess, just happens to be accurate. So let's change that again. And we'll do 99, 98, and let's do 99. So that can't be right. So 296. So if you multiply 98 by 3, I don't believe you get 296. So we have a problem. Okay, let's fix it. So what we need to do down here, we need to convert one of these to a float. Because as long as one of them is a floating point variable, either a float or a double, you won't get a division error. In other words, if I divide 5 by 2 in integer division, the answer is going to be 2 because it's going to be 2.5, but it's going to trump off the 2.5. So let's run it again with the same things. So we have 99, 99, and 98. And so it's 98.6666. The reason why I said 98 before is because the 6666 got knocked off. So if we wanted to display in a certain number of decimal places, what we'll do here is we have the IOmanip. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do cout fixed. That means print it to a fixed decimal point, and we're going to set the precision to 2 or 3 or 4. Now, set precision is a special function that's built in. It just takes a parameter and it does all that stuff. So let's do the same data. And let's do 99, 98, and 99. And so it's 99.666. So something is not right. Let's see what's going on in here. All right, unfortunately, my memory goes pretty bad. Let's try it again. 99, 98, 99. All right, there we go. So now let that be a note to you that there are times that the compiler doesn't give you an error message. So now suppose we want it to be different things. We can change it to 3, 4. That's why I put the set, the fixed on one line, and this. We could actually pass how many decimal places that we want to print it to the function that is running it in here. So now let's write another function called, it'll be a void, and we'll call it display average. So we're passing in a float. And then we'll and we need a float and average. I'm not sure if I spelled it right, so I have to look and see what I spelled, how I spelled it. All right, let's see. It might be just plain disp. Display average. All right, so we have something. Cannot overload function with the return type. So I must have display average in, let's see. So cannot overload function by return type alone. Okay, I'm not sure what average, display average. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong right now. So let me copy this to see if there's a spelling message in here. Oh, duh, this is a void. Okay. We'll get to overloading functions another time. All right. So that takes care of it here. And we're going to do cout the average is, and we'll do the cout fixed set precision to 2, and the average is, and average. Okay, now we don't need to return anything because we have a void. So let's go back up here, and we don't really need this right now, but we're going to put in here is display average, and we'll pass the average and see what happens. We'll just comment this out. So we'll do the same thing, 98 and back to 99. So everything worked out really good. So we could actually use this function to display other things. So if I have a float here, I could, unfortunately, I can do overload things. I could put in different data types in here, but I don't want to get into that right now. But anyway, what I'm getting at, the purpose of functions are for you, number one, so you can break down a big problem into little problems. The more code you have together, the more chances that you make an error. So if you make an error, you're going to find it in here. So you know how it is. If you doing 100 things, you do them usually one job at a time. So what we're going to do here is just go through this again, and then I'll give you an opportunity to ask some questions. So we have a constants in here, lowest grade, highest grade in here. And of course, if we wanted to make it 5 students, let's actually do that before we go through it again. See how easy it is to change it? You don't have to make any other code. So let's do 99, 95, 99, 92, and 97. Didn't do anything except change the 3 to a 5. So we have the max students in here. We're setting the grades for average in here. We're using a for loop. For loops tells us keep doing it until we get to a certain number, which in this case is max students. The I++ increments it. Then we're going to get a grade. We're passing the lowest and the highest, so we're guaranteed to get a grade. That's within there. We're printing out the grade, and then we're updating the sum. So the first thing, sum is 0. If we add a 90, then sum will be the combination of 0 plus 90, which will be 90. If the next person gets 100, sum starts at 90. So this plus equals means add whatever grade is there, which is 100, to the current value of sum and update it. So grade is 90. We add 100. It's now 190. Then we're printing out the total of the grades. Then we're calculating the average. This is so we can print it to a certain number of decimal places. Then we're just displaying the average in here. So that is the main. We are, let's see, we're getting the grade in here. We're making sure it's between the lowest and highest. So what we're doing is we're going to keep doing this as long as we need data. So we're entering a grade between the lowest and the highest. We're getting the grade. We're checking to see if the data is really what we're doing, and we're checking to see if it's invalid. So now we have, is it lower than the lowest? Yes, it is. Or is it higher than the highest? If either one of these are true, then it's going to set this to true, and then you're going to get an error message. And then it's going to say need data. Well, need data is true. Then it's going to make you keep going back in here. Finally, when you give in, pass the right grade, then it returns it back to the calling program, which is right here. Then it just keeps looping till we're done. Then we calculate the average. We calculate the average in here by, we have the total or the sum, and then we know how many students are there. So we're just converting total to a floating point number. So if, say it was 290, it would be changed to 290.0. So now we're dividing a float by an integer, which will give us a float. You could also do an integer divided by a float and get a float. But if you do an integer by an integer, you're going to get an integer, and it's going to chop off, and then we're just displaying it.